5:15 rather, and I will call this meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order for Tuesday, August 3, 2021. One item on our agenda tonight will be dropped off. That is item number 4, as there are still some details getting ironed out for our consideration on that, so we're not really prepared to address that tonight. Otherwise, we will follow the agenda as it's listed. First item is approval of the minutes from our meeting way back on June 1st of this year. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? I have a motion from Killian. Do I have a second? Looking for a second. All right, I have a second from Rasmussen. Thank you. Changes, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Number 2, discussion and possible action on waiver of right to first refusal at 400 South 86th Avenue from Canistra Properties LLC to Quality Time Custom Fit Linens LLC. City Attorney Jacobson, would you want to take us on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are pretty straightforward. You've done many of these before. It's a business campus address, and so there's a deed restriction in the business campus that requires that when they get an accepted offer from a non-related entity, they have to first offer it to the city at the contracted purchase price. And this time it's in the amount of $489,000. So if you are not wanting to repurchase that property, then you should make a motion to approve the waiver of the right of first refusal to repurchase the property. Thank you.
I'll move to approve the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a second? I have a second from McElhaney. Comments? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you. Number 3, discussion and possible action on approving contracting with Aplomb PR to manage the Wausau Facebook page. Attorney Jacobson?
Thank you, Tom. I sent a belated email to you all on the committee, the ED committee, this morning regarding my review of this last contract, which the proposed one was just for $1,000. It was sent to the mayor on June 21st, the day it was supposed to be effective. She asked me to look at it the same day, and on the 24th, I got back to her, and I thought it was probably worthy to bring back to your attention to get it all under one umbrella, just out of transparency, if nothing else. I mean, if we want to engage in these serial contracts for 6 weeks, 11 weeks at a time, I guess that's fine. Our procurement policy doesn't really address serial contracting. So as I said, to be totally transparent, I wanted to bring to your attention that, well, the committee released an RFP in 17 and 18. In 19, they selected Elizabeth Knight of Aplomb PR. That was not approved by council, but they approved her only for 2019. The scope of work has changed a little bit throughout these contracts, and now with the latest one, which was for 11 weeks, that $1,000 would bring the total to this vendor of $39,500 over the last 3.5 years. So I bring that all to you with her proposed contract now, which was supposed to start June 21st and end September 6th for $1,000 to manage the Wausau Facebook page when Sean Fitzgerald left. So if you want to expand that scope, have a discussion about that. I mean, she did not include in that the stories, but she could do that for extra money. So I would encourage you to have a discussion about the scope of services and the length of the contracting and whether we want to engage in a longer contract rather than do these very small serial contracts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, we've been seeing that work has been ongoing, and I appreciate you doing that for us, Elizabeth. You know, and this is an ongoing need, really. I don't think this is something that comes and goes every, 6 or 11 weeks or whatever. I do think that this deserves, like a yearly contract for sure, because we need somebody to keep an eye on that thing, and really, I don't think we have people on staff that we've, pinned down to do that, and they have other things that we would like them to be doing instead. So. I think what we should be talking about is continuing the work. Maybe have a discussion about the nature of the work, and the length of time that we would like to see it to be continued. So first of all, do I have a motion, Alder Rasmussen?
I have a question before I make a motion about the
Okay.
scope of Elizabeth's work. We actually, as an ED committee, when we contracted with her, we had her doing more than just managing the Facebook
Yeah.
page. We had her marketing, she was doing outreach, she was placing boosted paid online content, and then tracking the metrics associated with the hits and the interactions with that operation. And so during those few years since we started with her, we had been earmarking about $10,000 a year in the economic development budget for the purpose of marketing, and she was fulfilling that marketing. Is that a separate contract from this? This would be just to engage her to fill in until somebody comes in to either replace Sean or Chris Schock, right?
I would say so. If memory serves, and it rarely does very clearly at this stage of the game, I do believe that our first contract, and Elizabeth, you can chime in anytime. I seem to remember that that was a bit beefier. That we had a budget of about maybe 24,000 or something like that for a year's worth of work. But that was putting together those stories, getting them out into the media, across the country, and then gauging and reporting on results. Coverage that we got, inquiries we might have got, all that kind of thing. So, and then subsequently, when we, went through other budgetary, sessions, we, whittled it down to more of like maintaining, the Facebook presence and that sort of thing. So we at least have some fresh content out there and are keeping an eye on that on our behalf. So, Elizabeth, is that pretty much how you see it?
Your memory's good. That first contract initially, we did a number of macro pieces, so that was very targeted media relations work and getting stories placed throughout the country. The second contract is kind of when the My Wausau story was born, the whole concept. So the development of the stories, the development of the social strategy, analyzing the metrics, as Alderman Rasmussen stated, doing some very targeted advertising in specific metro areas that we had identified as being important to the economic development of the city. So that all came into play that year. Then 2020 was just things fell apart for obvious reasons. And then I noticed as we went into 2021, the Facebook page has been getting messages and there just wasn't any engagement going on. All of the investment and the work to build that page, I think we're sitting at over 3,000 followers on that presently. I felt like that was kind of a waste and just letting that sit out there. So I had reached out to the mayor, and that's kind of how we got to this point with, well, at least let's just do, a stopgap measure of at least addressing the Facebook page, because we've built this and we have it out there and people are engaging with it and sending messages. At least we would have that covered. Certainly, if there's interest to pick back up where we left off with more of the comprehensive marketing of this campaign, we're certainly open to that. But that's kind of what got us to this point.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the page today. I've shared admin duties on various pages over the years, and I think that it would probably be good if I or somebody, maybe one or two people, are appointed admins, along with you on the page, because along with populating the page with content. Whether it's stories, photos, videos, that sort of thing. We really do need to beef up our following above, that 30 or 3,000 odd that we've got. I think we ought to be, adding them by the hundreds, through some outreach. And that just means that an admin has to take a certain amount of time, like every week, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, no big deal. But just go to the search function and start plugging in things like, Wausau, and see what comes up, Wausau Kayak Corp or whatever. And you're going to just go ahead and like their page, and then they're going to have more interactions with those pages, comment on their posts, share their posts and everything, try and get them to turn around, like our page, just be engaging. And that needs to happen as part of our Facebook thing going forward, because it's not just putting stuff on the page. if people aren't really, there's not that many people aware of the page or going there. So that outreach aspect, and I'm not saying that should be on you, you could certainly do part of that, but I think that, so you own the page at this point, or are you the lone admin of the page right now, Elizabeth?
Yeah, you and I are the two individuals that have
Sure.
access to it.
Yeah, I think that it'd be good to appoint somebody, like I said, I'd be happy to do it, I've done it before, and maybe another individual who's, into that kind of thing, so we could maybe have them be more engaged in that kind of boring outreach type stuff, while you're more engaged in the content of the page. So that's my comment on it so far. Committee? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I do think that it's wise for us, at least on a short-term basis, to engage Liz to maintain that site and keep that content fresh, especially until we can get the new Economic Development Director on board. I do think once she's here, we need to, I guess, have a dialogue with her about where she sees responsibility for that, whether it's, within her office or whether it's contracted out or what. So that's a bridge we'll have to cross when Liz gets here. I do think that it's important, though, for web-based content that's placed on any city website to be administered either by a contractor or by a city employee. I think that it puts you as an alder, Mr. Chairman, in an awkward position to manage a city-hosted website. I think that even though you're good at it and you've done it before, as a public official, you shouldn't be put in that position. So I
Right.
have concerns about anyone putting you in that position. So
Right.
I think it needs to be someone that works for the city, or Liz, or both, but don't let it be you.
My take on that is that, as a, kind of behind-the-scenes admin, doing mechanical things, not doing, anything alderperson-ish. I would not be identified, nor would I be, putting opinions out or anything like that. It's more like, like this, I like this post, I'll share that post, stuff like that. Very mechanical and very behind the scenes, and it could be me, it could be anybody doing it, and nobody can really tell. So, Mayor?
Yeah, I want to agree. I have concerns about people like us who are elected, kind of managing the city properties. I specifically haven't had access to any of our Facebook pages except for my own, because I don't want to draw that controversy. So I'm in favor of having Elizabeth do this for us on the short term, and then obviously having that conversation with our new economic development director when she starts next week.
Good enough. Do we want to talk about timeline? Alder Killian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few questions. One for City Attorney Jacobson about elaborating on the kind of serial contracting and how the process or procurement may look if it was, say, one lump sum done in a shorter or singular occasion versus smaller frequent contracts, and also the RFP time that was mentioned of 2018 and 2019. Let's say this hadn't been serial contracted and it had been, a sum that was put together in a singular or fewer occasions. Would that have generally then triggered another RFP process potentially since 2018 or 2019? So could you just clarify that a little bit, please?
I'm not sure that I can clarify those good questions for you, Tom. I did not get copies of all the prior contracts. I don't know, based on the timelines and the time periods for which they covered and the amounts, I don't have those details with me, whether or not at any individual given time, if we'd just been looking at that one, it would have triggered the procurement policy in a different way. But in the totality, I just felt it was important to tie everything together, since I only had notes from 2 ED committees. They did an RFP, but the council didn't technically approve the vendor, which we typically do. But maybe that was because it was based on the initial amount. I don't know. And because our policy doesn't cover serial contracting, and it was for such a short period, I just wanted to daylight that, bring that to your attention, and make sure that she was authorized to continue and for a period, and that you give us the details as to what you want in the contract.
Thank
It's the
you.
best I can answer that. I'm sorry. I probably don't have all the details.
Well, thank you for trying, and I would guess that if it was significant enough to bring to our attention, then it is, quote, significant enough in general. So I'd feel more comfortable if your office would review that, just to make sure that it would not trigger any concerns on process or procurement, just because of the things you've told us. And then my question for the committee or for Elizabeth would be, in this specific case that we're voting on tonight, could we clarify what the time frame and amount would be then in this case?
Well, what we've been talking about, what was $1,000 for getting tagged on to this, taking us through, what, September?
September 6th, it was
6th?
June 21st to September 6th. It was 11 weeks.
Okay. I think at the very least, we need to discuss, and I would favor approving that, to have Elizabeth in place, continuing the work, which I think needs to be continued. We need fresh content out there. We need an eye on it at all times. And then, yes, it's a good point, and when our new director comes, that, we can, readdress this from her, standpoint, and, maybe even with a recommendation from the committee at that point, about what we would like, but ultimately, then it would be up to her. So do I have a motion from the committee? Yes,
I'll
Alder
make a
Rasmussen.
motion to approve, but I have just a quick comment. I think that the time is coming because, we did not, we had cut funding for the marketing process, thinking that we had really launched something that had some momentum and could coast for a bit. I think the time is coming, though, in future budget cycles where we will have to, again, devote money to marketing the city of Wausau like we had been. And I think when that happens, we definitely need to then re-RFP that process. And, we may find that our vision is even different than what it was 3 years ago. So I'll make a motion to approve this temporarily.
Okay.
From June 21st through September 6th, I mean retroactively, assuming she's been managing the page, is that what
Correct.
you want to
If
do for the
she's already been doing
1,000?
the work, and
Okay,
she has a month left, I think we need to capture
right.
that whole time period.
all right, thank you.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second from the committee? I have a second from Watson. Alder McElhenney, go ahead.
I think since the question came up, I just need, I think for transparency's sake for our residents, Elizabeth, you have been managing this page since June 24th, is that the date?
Right around June 24th, I could pull up the contract. It's like either June 22nd, 23rd.
Oh, yeah, I mean, but you have been managing the page from then, I don't know the specific date either, but from that time on, you've been managing it, correct? You haven't been waiting because of the contract not being signed?
No, I just went for it.
Okay, thank you.
There has been, fresh content appearing on the page. So, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. That passes 4-1.
Thank you.
All right, as I mentioned earlier, we're skipping item number 4 for future consideration. 5, discussion and possible action on assignment and assumption of Thomas Street Phase 1 remnant parcels from Vested Nest Property Group LLC to Thomas Street Duplex LLC, and amendment to development agreement eliminating paragraph 9, transfers assignment. Attorney Jacobson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is all kind of a legal technicality, if you will, but if you'll recall, for the Thomas Street Phase 1 remnant parcels were sold to Blanker, who then had a bunch of entities that we referred to as Edifix Holdings. And if you will recall, they did a 1031 exchange before all of the duplexes were built, and they transferred the property to Bearded Captain, and then Bearded Captain transferred it to Vested Nest Properties. And so on October 22nd of 2019, the city council did properly approve those assignments. Well, now Vested Nest wants to transfer it on another 1031 exchange to a Fran Earhart, who then assigned her purchase contract to Thomas Street Duplex LLC. So basically, it's another sale down the line from Vested Nest now to Thomas Street Duplex LLC. And the original development agreement requires that they come to the city to get approval for assignment of the development agreement. at the last council action, we agreed to waive that right of first refusal. And so that's no longer in the mix, but the contract or the development agreement still requires that we approve assignments of the development agreement, the obligations and the rights. I'm not sure they were aware of that. They had intended to close before the title company contacted us. So what we're asking you to do and what we'll have in the council packet is this First Amendment, which formalizes that the fact that we no longer require approving purchases, or I mean, we no longer get the right of first refusal, but now Thomas Street Duplex LLC has requested that we eliminate paragraph 9 from the development agreement as well, which would eliminate the city's ability to approve assignments and transfers of the property. So based on the advice of Quarles and Brady, and I agree with them, the property is built, all 6 duplexes are finished, the full amount of the loan has been forgiven, and there are no other remaining obligations in the development agreement save one, and that is that if it ever gets transferred to a property that's non-taxable, they'll have to make a pilot payment to the city. But that obligation remains whether or not we consent to the assignment. So what you're really giving up is you won't know now if Thomas Street Duplex LLC goes and transfers it on again, that won't get caught. Once we record this First Amendment, now we're waiving all of our rights to consent to these assignments and transfers going forward after this transfer. Does that make sense? So in the end, yeah.
Does this mean that, well, in future, or in this case, or in future cases, that, you know, there will be no ability nor any real need to do any vetting of
Correct.
a new party?
Right. They will
Because
not
we have
require
no
to come
vested interest
forward.
in doing that. So we still retain the one item where if there's a transfer to a nonprofit, and that's still in effect.
Any assignees will have that obligation to make the pilot payment if that fits under the
Okay.
development agreement. We just might not know who the owners are
Right.
until
So-
we check into it, but that can be easily
So
found.
otherwise, all obligations in the agreement, just fall on, the owner
Correct.
and get transferred to a new owner.
Right. It just saves us having to
Sure.
approve the assignments with each subsequent transfer.
It's clear to me. Committee?
I have a question on that.
Sure.
So with regard to the parcels, now, when Edifix or Blanker acquired those parcels, they have fulfilled their obligation. They built the homes as they were requested to, even after the first transfer. They finished the last 2. So assuming that we would approve this item and that we would then give up our right to vet transfers, with the project being complete and now they're all done and they're paying tax, in my mind, they're really no different than any other rental property in the city of Wausau to be managed by the private sector. And the public interest has been served. If they built what they said they were going to build and they're paying property tax on it as prescribed, I don't know that we necessarily need a dog in that fight anymore, as long as we have the pilot payment covenant intact. So would it be your advice to then proceed with removing item 9?
Yes.
Okay.
We think that makes sense.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
So you're
Alder
going to move
Killian.
to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I
Go
will
ahead.
make a motion to approve if we want one before you discuss.
Yes, please, I appreciate that. Is there a second before we continue with discussion? Looking for a second. If we don't second this, then we don't move on it, then is it moot?
Well, I suppose what you could do is move to approve this assignment, but not, you could separate it if people have objections to one part of it, not the other. It's all going to be contained in one First Amendment when it gets to the council, but if people have no problem with letting Vested Nest assign this to Thomas Street, that's one thing. If you want to maintain that other paragraph and continue to require that they keep coming forward like this for approvals for transfers, then we can separate these into 2 separate motions.
Sounds like busy work to me, but really for discussion purposes, I mean, I would need a second before we go any
With
further.
regard to the issue, I mean, if we are, now with my motion to approve it and to approve the removal of item 9, it really, if the project was built as it was proposed, it really is poor form for us then if we are going to continue to stand in the way of a private land sale with private sector funds.
Right.
And so I really feel it's
It's
in
not our
our best
business.
interest to first let this one transfer, because why would we stand in the way of a real estate transaction that we've got no money in? And B, future ones as well. As long as
Right.
the taxation part is intact, we have nothing to lose.
Right.
So, I mean, I certainly would hope that even if we break this up, I feel like we are not doing ourselves any favors by voting no on either one.
And I'm not really interested in symbolic gestures here either. I mean, this is a pragmatic question, and I want it dealt with in a pragmatic manner. So I ask again, is there a second to the motion from the committee?
I will second
Thank you.
for discussion purposes.
That's fine. Second by McElhenney. Do you have a comment right away?
No.
Okay. Who has a comment next? Alder Watson.
So I guess my question is, I thought I read at the end for staff recommendation that I would recommend not eliminating paragraph 9.
Where did I write that? It's been a rough 2 weeks. I apologize. Did I say that?
It's on the second page of the, packet of your memo.
Well, I'm wrong. I apologize. I might have written that too before I talked to Isaac. But as Lisa points out, we don't have any skin in the game anymore. You're just holding a formality over any future transfer of this private property now by making them come back just for you to approve the transfer, when, as she says, we have no money in the game, the project's complete. Yeah, I'm wrong. I changed my opinion.
Thank you. I like it when somebody owns up that they were wrong about something.
I'm
That's
wrong.
that's a good, valuable trait to have as a human being. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think a further caveat to this is that it always behooves us to make sure that people similarly situated are treated the same. And I think if we were to not have, as Ann says, any interest in managing this rental property as it changes hands in a private sale, if we would require that one project keep coming back to us for those type of transactions and not every other, we then are putting ourselves in a position where, we're not equitably treating commercial interests. So I think we need to be cautious with keeping something like this intact if we're no longer involved. I mean, they did their part of the job, so.
That's right. I think if we, as a committee and as alder people, look at this, again, in a very pragmatic and realistic manner, we can see what it is from a business standpoint. This is not something for us to discuss in terms of non-business related concerns. So anyways, I will leave it open yet to further discussion. Is there any, Alder Killian?
Thank you. And my hesitation was what Alder Watson had brought up just about the earlier recommendation, but that's all right. Very willfully follow your advice, City Attorney Jacobson. So, but beyond that, I mean, just on the philosophical discussion of interacting with the government and inviting the government into business matters. I mean, that's just, I think, the reality when there is a quote-unquote public-private partnership, that when you benefit off the government's land or money, there are going to often be attachments and contracts and so forth. But hearing what I've heard, that this serves no utility for the city or functional value at this point, I think that clears up my apprehensions.
Again, I apologize for the confusion
It's
that I solely
okay.
created.
Take that sword and put it away. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Further discussion from the committee. I'm seeing no hands. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.
And thank you, Attorney Jacobson.
Thank you.
Item number 6, discussion and possible action on adopting We Are Wausau Resolution, otherwise known as Community for All. First of all, do I have a motion from the committee? I have a motion from Killian. Do I have a second from the committee? I have a second from Watson. Thank you. Discussion from the committee. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think it's not lost on anyone that my motion in council to refer this back for a little rework is still pretty fresh. And my movement along that line was hopeful that we would have a meaningful discussion here about what we want to say as a city and not just adopt someone else's verbiage and, say what we need to say in a way that will benefit and maybe even heal this community. And so my motivation in bringing it here was certainly not to, stop it or kill it. It's to emerge out the other side of this with a better product. That said, I think that we are headed in the right direction on this. I know that the mayor worked hard on massaging some new language here to try to get us to a better place. And, I think that we are heading down a way better path than we were a few weeks ago. Partially because some of the statistical references and, the data-driven and data points aren't in here anymore. And this really does take more of a philosophical tack, which I think is the message that we were trying to get out there as a statement about what we want to be as a community and what we don't want to be as a community. That said, I did read this over, and I am going to propose 5 changes, 4 of which are cosmetic and 1 that is substantive. So I brought with me some copies, and I highlighted in yellow what those changes are, and they're small. But I will pass those along, just because it's easier to follow along than me to try to have you all follow along to, whereas number 1 and whereas number 2. So if you have the original up on your screen and it's up on the big screen, once we all have one, I'll just walk through my changes. So I brought 15, so we should have enough. If we have extra ones, we can throw them up on the table if anyone wants one. Okay, so our committee members all have one. And so in the first whereas, I am proposing a kind of a cosmetic change to the tail end of that resolution, where we had originally stated we want to be a community where all feel welcomed and fall in love with our community the way we have fallen in love with our community. And I felt like that was a little weighty in terms of the whole falling in love concept. And so I proposed that we would change that to a community where all feel welcomed and love our community the way we love Wausau. We don't need to fall in love. We're already there. And so hopefully other people will get there too. But I think that is just a little more concise, but the meaning is the same. Whereas number 3, you'll see a cosmetic change. I think we use the word "and" too much. We don't need to see and hear and appreciate and participate. So I threw in, my friend, the comma. We see, hear, appreciate, and participate. Wording is no different. We just got rid of 4 ands. Then we skip down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas number 6. This one is a little more of a meaty change because the paragraph that we had written does bring about, and it continues to use the term equity, which we know has been inflammatory in the community as we've been discussing this. And, regardless of the context to which you use that term, that often will cause people to immediately be on guard about whatever you're trying to say. And so I changed that. And my changes began at the second line where it says, "We will continue to work to achieve equity." I changed it to, "We will continue to work to foster understanding and embrace opportunities. We recognize that to achieve this, people need sustainable and fair access to opportunities that will help us all pursue the American dream." We pursue the American dream in America. We do not just automatically gain access to it. We need to be given the opportunity to pursue our dreams just as anyone else would. So that is a little bit of a substantive change, but it's still a positive message. And the other word that I changed is in the next paragraph, and I changed progressive to forward thinking. Only because the word progressive has, over the years, right or wrong, come to embody a political alignment. And we are a nonpartisan office, and we are trying to heal a community that's been divided now for a couple years. And I think that the less political we are in our language, the better off we are. And we do want to be a community that looks forward to the future, but I also think that to label an entire community using a term that many people now view as a negative, whether that's legit or not, I think that we can do better and change that to forward thinking. But other than that, I think we're on a path to find something that our community can agree with. It does have a positive message that we are calling on. And my first complaint with this was that We alone, as 11 council members, can't change anybody's thoughts and minds. We can't change how people were raised. We can't change the wording that they choose to use. And people need to make a conscious effort to do different things or be different when they are willing to do that. And so, you know, an item introduced by the 11 of us really is not going to change individual behaviors. But I think if we, as the wording shows at the end, call on everyone to be a little better when it comes to how we treat one another and how we view one another, you know, and that we call on nonprofit leaders and community organizers and businesses and families and schools to embrace one another's differences and not use them in a negative way. I think that this has a better message than where we began. So I'm curious to have a discussion about, you know, what you guys think of a few changes, because I think there's a way to get this done without having everybody come to council and choose up sides again for left and right.
Okay, well, thank you. From where I sit, you know, your changes to the first, second, and last changed whereas don't really substantively, you know, change things, or like you said, some kind of aesthetic changes, and that's fine. I have no qualms with them. The one with the broader changes, I think we do need to have a discussion about, because by making the changes, all the changes that we're looking at here right now, I feel what we have is a purely aspirational statement. Purely aspirational. And I think that part of that is sort of a product of, you know, what, you know, for years now has been, you know, referred to as like white fragility. And white fragility, and there's like a book on it, and it's a discussion topic that's been going on for a long time, and it's gaining a lot more ground nowadays. But it's a mindset on the part, you know, particularly of older, conservative, white, straight people. And I'm sorry, but that's pretty much the audience segment that we're talking about. That, not all of them, but within that segment, there is, you know, an ability for people to have white fragility, which is when they hear any statement that talks about white privilege or racial bias or inequality or lack of access, lack of equity, they get emotionally defensive about it. And they don't want to acknowledge it. And I really think that we're grown-ups. And grown-ups have to go beyond lofty aspirational talk and also deal with acknowledgement of realities. There are realities in our society and in our community. It could be very limited, but it's there. You know, we get comments on this call for a Community for All declaration from people saying, and again, it's the people I just described, telling us this is only going to divide us more. These are the same people that will tell you, do not teach the truth in class about history. Don't teach, you know, what they're calling critical race theory. You're just going to divide us more. People shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're using all these buzzwords. What they're trying to do is skirt issues and not deal with realities. Instead, what we've been taught, what I was taught in school, and what you were taught, and all of us were taught in school, at various levels and at various periods in our history of this country, has been a very whitewashed and white-based history and sociology of our country. Anyone who will look at it truthfully and honestly and clearly will see that that is a fact. And I think it's important to at least acknowledge to some degree that we're not perfect and that there is a thread in our society that is counterproductive and counter to the aspirations that we're stating here. And that we are unified to speak up and acknowledge that and to make sure that that doesn't gain hold and that that doesn't represent us. I think it's important, and I want this discussion hopefully to go on in this committee, because I'm a little concerned that the changes you made there, and I appreciate your attempt, take out any acknowledgement whatsoever. And I think the acknowledgement that's in this verbiage is not mean, it's not accusatory, it is merely acknowledging, like we didn't all start from the same place. And that's out. Because white fragility says, oh no, we all started from the same place. You know, God created us equal. That's where their starting point is. And the point is, they have never felt the effects of the repression or the bias that other marginalized, people have felt. They've been immune from it. Therefore, they can't see it, they won't acknowledge it, and if you talk to them about it, they get emotional about it. This is something I don't think that we should dance around. It's part, I think, of a statement that this city needs to make. That we're here to not only have aspirations, but we're here to acknowledge and to work together to get past things that aren't really great about our society. So I think we need some element of that in this discussion. Anybody else?
I guess I'll just offer a subsequent comment. I think almost all of this is aspirational. We know that we alone as a council, through any sort of statement like this, we cannot fix this. Communities in America struggle with this countrywide, and aspire isn't a bad word. We aspire to do a lot of things. And, I think if we are asking people as a group of schools and community members and families and, churches and whatever, to aspire to a goal, if more people aspire to a goal, you'll get to your goal. I don't think it's bad to be aspirational. And I also think that as a community, we need to heal. I mean, the folks that you are referring to, using the term fragility, and the people that are often angry about things like this represent like 40% of our population. And I think that it's wrong for us to discount people's point of view because we don't agree with them. And that's why I want us to come out of this with a document that doesn't appear to be partisan in any way. We as a community want to be a better community. We want to be a place where people want to live, work, start their business, educate their children. And so this shouldn't devolve into a discussion amongst us about, what gets taught in our schools and everything else. I mean, we want to be a community where people want to be. And it goes without saying that people don't want to be in a place where negative behaviors are happening. We know that for a fact. And, I think that if you ask many, many people, even the folks you refer to, there's a lot of people that didn't start in the same place. We know that. We know that very few people start in the same place.
Well, Alder Rasmussen,
So-
I'm sorry, okay.
So
go ahead.
that's just my thought, is that if we're going to come out the other side with something that doesn't have, my concern at the council, and recall how that council meeting was. It was red hot in here.
Sure.
And so as long as we have in our community a half a room that wants to jump up and call the other half of the room Marxists, and then you have the other half of the room that is so angry about that they run to the podium and call the other half ignorant, we can never heal our city that way.
Okay.
This is a bad situation.
I want to counter to that before I get to you, Alder Killian. I disagree with you on several points, and rather vehemently, really. You talk about church, Well, I was raised Catholic. I don't know how many people here were, but I'll venture that anybody here that was raised in any kind of church went to church and learned real soon that we're sinners. We were told, you're born in sin. We have to acknowledge our sins. In the Catholic faith, we go do confession and penance to acknowledge our sins. Not just to be aspirational and to be Jesus-like, but to acknowledge our downfalls, our failures, the things that we have failed to do as people. That's what church is. That's what religion is for, I think, just about anybody in this city. It's not just going there and, praising Jesus.
Well, I don't think we need to be, there, first, let's be clear about a separation
Let me
between church
finish,
and
please.
state.
Let me finish, please. Second, you say, well, we all know. And you think, since we all know, that we don't have to say it, that we just can assume it. No. Just because you think you know something or you assume something to be true, it means nothing if you cannot stand up and affirm it, acknowledge it, state it as a fact, own it as a fact. And you tell me that if we go to council with this change, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to direct this to you, but we are kind of having a conversation. If we took this, with these changes, I think, to council, the scenario that you just laid out about sides, going after each other, well, you might find one side being a lot more ameliorated. That being, the people that have kind of pushed back against this from the get-go. The people that are going to be disappointed are the marginalized people that don't see themselves in this document anymore because they're not being acknowledged as people who didn't start in the same place as we did, have run into issues, and continue to do so in our society and in our community. If we cannot acknowledge that on their behalf, then what have we done? We've done something very sweet. It's sweet, but it has no meat.
It doesn't have to be ugly, and the point is.
It doesn't have, no, there's no
It
ugliness.
doesn't have to be ugly, and it doesn't have to get ugly.
There is no ugly in here. This is not an ugly document
No,
whatsoever.
But we're listen to us right now. This is starting to get ugly, and it doesn't have to. The whole point is that we want a document that makes a statement about what kind of community we aspire to be, and that doesn't mean that as citizens, my reference to church is because this document calls on religious institutions. It has nothing to do with my analysis of whether or not the point made by any church is right or wrong. But at the end of the day, we need to tell people or make a statement about what kind of community we want to be and what kind we don't want to be. That's what this is really about. And that's what this says. And there's not a thing wrong with using positive language to make that happen, because that's why this stuff is such a fight. And my statements that I've made before about us in this realm trying to take up social issues, the reason this feels like such a struggle is because we don't really have the power or the tools to impact these issues in municipal governments. That's why this is so hard. And so at the end of the day, regardless of which version we pass, show me what's any different. No one's like, one day after, 1 week after, 1 year after this document gets approved or that first document gets approved, no one's life is any different. But people are still mad. And sometimes no matter what you do for one group or another, it's never enough. So could we just agree on a statement that says, as Wausau, we want to be a great place. And we want to be a place where people want to be without getting down in the weeds and re-adjudicating negative history.
Alder Larson.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had your hand up before, didn't you?
Yes, that's okay. I'm fine with sequence, Mr. Chair. I
Go
can
ahead.
wait. I just wanted to know, we've been presented multiple changes. Was that a proposed amendment, or are we just being given kind of a literary analysis here? So is there an amendment on the floor?
It's a proposed amendment. I will make a motion that we approve it to include these changes, but I would request that we vote on them one at a time, because I think that 4 of the 5 are not an issue.
3 of the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can I,
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 whereases in question.
There's 4 whereases.
Okay.
Yes, so if you consider the word pursue as the 5th one, I took them as 5 highlighted areas on the page, so.
Well, okay, I think what we need to do before we have a motion to amend, I want to hear more comments,
Okay,
because, they could be that motion, flies or dies.
right.
you know,
Well, let's wait on the motion and
it could be due to a lack of further
okay,
discussion.
so I'll withdraw my motion, and then we can have a real discussion.
Okay, thank you. Alder Killian, you had your hand up before?
It's all right if Alder Larson goes first. You had called on him, but whatever works best, Mr.
It's the
Chair.
memory thing. It's just,
No problem at
I
all.
wasn't
No.
looking in your
Go ahead,
direction
Alder
anymore, so
Killian.
you were out of mind. Alder Larson.
When you talk about, this is, I'm Lou Larson, 904 South 21st Place. I'm also alderman for District 10. I come to you this evening not only as an alder person, but as a citizen. You talk about this not getting ugly. Well, it's ugly. And there's an alder person that made it ugly by not letting all the districts be represented the last time this come around. By shutting down a discussion, we did not get to talk about this. All the emails that came in supporting this, all the people that stood out here supporting this, got shut down. And that's what really upset me, because it was a miscarriage of justice. And now, this same alderperson said there and said, we need to get on with city business, like finances and budgets and stuff. This is city business, because the people out there want it. And then now the same alderperson that said we need to get on with city business and was adamantly against this, comes up with her own version. I'm not going to support these changes. I'm going to support the original as I don't have a voice in this committee. But when this does come to council, I will not support this in this form right here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe that what is of interest to the people should be of interest to the government, and in a legitimate democracy, the government serves the people and not vice versa. So I would certainly agree with Alder Larson on that point. And, I don't think these changes are necessary or productive. If someone wants to occasionally move a comma or has a particular style on adding or removing ands, I suppose, hey, that's fine. But I think we should kind of remember what our objective is in this role, and it's not necessarily in that type of editorial function. But given those would be insignificant, I think it is what it is. On the question of equity, though, and when we have that discussion on diction and lexicon, I think that is a different story, and I certainly would strongly oppose removing that. And as the gentle lady from District 7 said just about 20 minutes ago when we were discussing Thomas Street, the term equitable or equitably was used in that dialogue. So often I see that, prolonged debate over a term like that, which generally means fair and impartial treatment. We could certainly define it as so. It often doesn't become a problem until the goal is to put an ideological notch on the belt. So, no, I do not think that should be removed. I think we've spent enough time belaboring some of these things about diction, and that this is a viable alternative. When this was brought back to the committee, which Community for All passed unanimously in this committee the last time, I think we should move ahead and pass this and get it to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Mayor? I want to put you on the spot a little bit, if you will. You've heard our discussions. You're very involved in the rewrite. The paragraph in question, which is 5, the sixth whereas, has been substantially rewritten. You did a rewrite yourself, and now we have a recommended rewrite from Alder Rasmussen. I'd like your reaction on this, and you've heard everything I've spouted up here and everything, and what do you think?
Well, first of all, I do feel like I've had my say on this topic. I've had a proclamation, I've had a press release, I've been quoted in the New York Times. I've talked to everybody that wanted to talk to me. So I do feel that where I stand is pretty clear, and I do think that the word equity is important. And I do think that gaining access to the American dream is different than being allowed to pursue it. However, this has to be owned by all of you. And so I think it's really important that you're having this discussion. So I want you to feel that this is your document. I think that was one thing that was pretty clear to me at the council meeting, is that folks didn't feel like they got to own this document. So that's why I've specifically been sitting there and not saying anything. But, you know, every word that was in there was intentional on my part, but I also am not married to it. So if this body needs to update it, that's what you got to do.
Thank you. You know, I get around the 4th District an awful lot. I don't really get around District 7, District 6 an awful lot. You know, I'm close to downtown, I'm in my neighborhood, I go for walks, I walk the dog, you know, go, you know, river walk, I go downtown. I don't know about anybody else's district, but all over District 4, including our front yard, are signs upon signs upon signs upon signs of people stating, we support #CommunityForAll. There's different versions of that sign, and they're all over the district. And, you know, I like seeing them. And, you know, I can only assume that that's a statement from these people that they support this document. They're telling me, and they're telling their neighbors, they're telling everybody that drives by, they support that document. I don't see any signs anywhere in District 4. I can't speak for other districts. I haven't seen a single one saying I don't support Community for All. I haven't seen those signs burnt or spray painted or abused or stolen. The responses I've gotten directly from my constituents have been overwhelmingly in support of this. Matter of fact, the only negatives that I've received have been emails that have been from outside of my district. There are certain people, yes, in this city that like to stir it up, and they do probably suffer from what I called, you know, the white fragility. And they're acting out because this is hitting a nerve with them. And they're going to tell me that this will further divide our city. Well, I don't know that that's true at all. All I know is it seems like my district is crying out for this and supporting it overwhelmingly. That's all I'm getting is support for it. And I'm not going to sit here and nitpick it and try and make it a little safer, a little whiter, a little less having any element of acknowledgement in it that we are humans and sometimes we sin. But that we're going to work together to get beyond it. That's what this is all about. And that's what the people supporting this want to hear. They want to know that we're big enough and adult enough to say, yeah, have not been perfect, but we're sure going to work to be perfect. Rather than just say, yeah, we're just going to sure work to be perfect. See the difference between those two statements? It is, to me, very significant. You don't go to confession as a Catholic and say, hi, Father, how's it going? You say, bless me, Father, I've sinned. And he'll say, okay, what up? And you tell him, and then you walk away feeling better. Well, I'm sorry, but in life sometimes you got to swallow a little bit and own up a little bit. Eat a little crow sometimes. Admit you're wrong. In the very rare occasions that ever happens. That's an adult way to look at this. I don't think that we should be trying to be safe about it. Because yes, there are people that won't like some of this wording. And I find the wording that's come to us has been very well thought out and is very, non-hurtful and non-mean in any way. But still, there are some that won't like it. And you know what? Those are the people that are kind of like representing the problem, not the solution. They're not the people that are going to pull this city together. They're not the ones that are going to stop any kind of division. That's not their job. Their job is to protect their white fragility. They don't want to own up. Anybody that brings this up is a whiner and a troublemaker to them. That's just the truth. And if we're not big enough and adult enough to accept that, then we should never have had kids. Any further discussion? Alder Killian.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the resolution in its current form and entirety.
That was the original, original motion has been made. Now, there was question of a possible motion to amend, and yet we've not dealt with that possible motion yet. Alder
I just
McElhaney,
want to speak.
go ahead.
Okay.
I've been waiting for you to speak.
Yeah, everybody was busy. So I guess I just have a question as I read this, and I have a different outlook, as well as my family has had issues with disabilities. I deal with people every day with disabilities, and so I have a question about the language placed in front of us. And I think there was a comment, and I may misquote, so I don't want to put, any words in people's mouths, but that we have to pursue, we have to choose to pursue the American dream. And I get that, but not everybody can starts at the same way. Not everybody is allowed to pursue their dream. So what I guess my question in all this is that when we state, we recognize that words have power, and when we say equity, we mean sustainable and just access to resources that will help us all gain entry to the American dream, but we realize we don't all start in the same place. I guess I would like a discussion of that language. What in that language, I've read that over and over for the last couple of days, what in that language is, I don't even know the word, is inflammatory. Because when we talked about this the first time, we talked about equity, and we wanted it, we wanted it defined. And this is a definition of that, yes, we mean access, sustainability, to help those that may not start here. I don't see that as inflammatory. And so I guess I want to hear what we feel is inflammatory about that and how that will inflame our residents. Because, it isn't just a word. I know that word is a bugaboo, but this is what we mean by that.
Can I respond to that? And maybe we could just keep our discussion going then? Just on that one point, I think that it's very legitimate to consider that any pushback on the spirit behind that wording is based in a firmly held sense of meritocracy as being what America is all about. That we're a meritocracy. Everybody, we've been taught ever since we were children, if you can be whatever you want to be. You just go ahead and you can be whatever you want to be. How many times were maybe you told that as a child? How many times was I told that as a child? Well, the mere fact of the matter is, while that is aspirational, we've seen in practice how barriers here and non-barriers there make the road to being what you want to be two different roads. Some of them aren't even a road. It's an obstacle course. And some is a thoroughfare. And for people to acknowledge that, it goes back to white fragility. It goes back to, I don't want to confront any truths about the way things really are or really have been in America, in my society, in my town. I don't want to acknowledge that. We're all the same. We all have the same opportunity. And if you're going to work hard, you're going to make it. That's what it's based in. The refusal to acknowledge that you could work 10 times as hard as me, chances are I'm going to get there before you. because you are what you are. You're handicapped, you know? You are this color. You are this ethnicity. You are this religion, you know? All those things are going to work against you, and I'm going to like kind of sail on. That is the way things are. We know that. Anybody take a sociology course in here? Anybody read a book? Anybody read a magazine? Anybody know that that's the truth? Of course it's the truth. It's undeniable. But truth hurts. And it hurts some people more than others. Because it gets to the basis of their self-image. So on your question there, that's what I think that pushback is. There's nothing in that statement that should be inflammatory, but people will react. Some people will react because you're hitting them where they live. You're making them face something they don't want to face. And I think that there's something good about facing what you don't want to face sometimes, because that's what makes you a better person. Or otherwise, you don't think about it. You don't acknowledge it. Nothing ever happens. You don't change. You don't go through an Ebenezer Scrooge moment. You just keep cruising along. Everything's fine. More comments? Okay.
I have one, and,
Okay.
I will just say that I think that, I still come back to the fact that regardless of, through what wording we want to acknowledge, either our current state or our future goals, this is a resolution. It is not enforceable public policy, and no matter how this comes out, it's largely a symbolic gesture. And, I'll acknowledge that I think that if I had to guess today, you probably have a majority of the votes on the council floor to pass whatever version you want to pass. My goal, first, is the way we work things in committee is an exchange of ideas. And if somebody shows up with a, disagreement about something and they offer no alternative ideas other than, I don't like that, we're not doing our job properly. So if anybody in this room wants to criticize me for bringing an alternate version or taking a stab at wording that, may play better in our community and bring some kind of unity here, I think the worst thing that has happened to our society nationwide is the division that we have seen in the last 4.5 years. It's turned families against one another. It's destroyed relationships. I don't know that we as a country can ever get back to a place where partisan politics is not playing a role every hour of our lives. And that's a product of factors that we can't control. But we certainly don't need to continue to engage in it and make it worse. My goal is to heal Wausau. Wausau needs to be one Wausau, not red Wausau and blue Wausau, and have people hating each other because of the way a document reads. Now, whether I agree with it personally or not, I just think that we need to find a way sometimes to find that middle. And I just don't feel that we're doing it if we're going to sit up as 11 council members and lecture people about behavior, and then this resolution does nothing to fix the stuff that you're all mad about. But I will ask that that the minutes of this meeting be clear.
Oh, sure.
In their transcription, and that we don't just write discussion followed. Because we've had a real discussion here that people need to understand.
You look back to like the 1960s, and I'll tell you, because I'm talking about the image a community can have, a city, a town, a village, whatever. The brand, what does it stand for? What's it known for? What's its personality? I would venture to say that at the same time, in the United States of America, the city of San Francisco was a whole lot different in its outlook, what it believed, what its brand was, what its image was, to the city of Selma, Alabama. Mm-hmm. They occupied the same country. But one was going down one path and the other was going down another. And I think it's important for cities to, to say, this is who we are. We've already been branded wrongly, by some ill-advised, actions from the county board, and that fell on us. That can't be just left to go. And I'm going to make a motion that we amend the document before us and accept the changes to paragraphs 1, 3, and 7. I take to heart, the concern about the word progressive. That's fine. I'd hate to think that we can't use the word forward, which is, the state of Wisconsin's motto, because,
Right.
some Democrat came up with it or something. I do not include in my motion changing the recommended changes to whereas number 6. So that's where I stand on amending the document before us. That's my motion. And the chair can make a motion, so. Alder Watson?
I'd second that motion.
I have a second from Watson.
So we'll take the first vote then on the amendment and then the second on the resolution as amended?
Yes.
Okay?
Any further discussion? Alder Watson?
I guess I just wanted to say that I think the whole resolution is very positive. I don't think we're lecturing anyone. I think we're just stating things in a bit more firm manner. I don't think we're vilifying. I mean, I see more, like every word in this resolution as being very positive and optimistic. So I do like that equity is, we recognize that the words have power. I think that's a valuable part to put in there, but then that we define equity in the way that we all see it, right? And it's not political, it's a dictionary definition, right? So, I mean, Webster's is pretty middle of the road. So I think those changes were made before are pretty good, sort of hemming up the resolution, but I definitely want to see equity stay.
All right, thank you. Further? I see no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are. Okay, then we'll go back to the original motion. We had a motion and a second to approve the resolution, the proposed resolution. Further discussion? Alder Killian? I almost called you Father Killian. It's the whole Catholic thing.
I won't read into that, Mr. Chair, and no armchair analysis from me. So I just wanted to touch on one thing briefly that was brought up earlier about partisan politics, and I think it's clear to most of my district and anyone who knows me, I'm not a member of any party, not blue or red. I am a member of the only party I find to be significant, and that is called the People. So I don't want to see this mischaracterized or bastardized just for some sort of political maneuvering. I represent my constituents independent of any party or entity, whether it's a business entity, a lobbying entity, or what have you. So I want you to know that when I vote affirmatively for this, it is for the people, it is for my hometown, and it is not for any darn political party. Thank you.
Thank you, well taken. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that goes 4-1. Thank you. Thank you for everybody's discussion, and I know it's a tough one to tackle. I appreciate your patience with me as well as I, get into my mode. That brings us to item number 7, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? There's Alder Killian, Alder Watson, all in favor? Aye? Aye. Thank you.